have to walk around like that.
Makers Central. Hey guys, Phil here. I've just got back from the Makers Central 2018 Expo, which was held at the NEC in Birmingham. If you don't know what it is, it's basically a large expo of different craftsmen sort of having a chance to exhibit their skills. So they had a lot of carpentry, wood turners, they had some metalwork, they had some sort of sculptures, they had an ice sculptor, they had people who dealt in things like ceramics or 3D printing. The point is, there was a whole sort of range of different sort of options to have a look at, all these various different crafts, and it was actually quite interesting. I thought I'd give you some feedback on what I thought of the actual day though. So things I enjoyed, I really liked the fact that there was plenty to see. There was no shortage of options. I mean, me and my girlfriend, we wandered around, or rather, I wandered around and she got dragged around by me. We were probably there for about 4.5 hours, and we didn't really get bored in that time. And the cool thing is, because there's quite a lot of people exhibiting their skills and things, there was quite a lot of freebies. We got given things like an engraved ice hockey puck, or things like some woodworking, just glues and bits and pieces, sort of just stuff if you wanted to get into crafts. And they also had a lot of sort of famous people, or sort of YouTube famous people there, who I'll go through in a minute. There were some things which, for me personally, were not so good. So there was an awful lot of wood turners. Like a good 50% of all the crafts there were probably people who were either doing wood turning or trying to sell wood turning equipment, lathes, or the chisels, tools. I don't know. I'm not particularly wise when it comes to woodwork. The other thing as well is the way they sort of sold it on the website is there are a lot of things you could get involved with. So there was due to be things like a wood turning station where you could make your own pens, or there was a leather stamping station. There was a sort of competition where you could build like a sculpture or a structure, I suppose, out of things like cocktail sticks and loo rolls. And the idea was you had to build as tall a structure as you can, and then somebody would come around and test it with things like a house brick and see how strong it was, and the winner, I think, got a goodie bag. And there was things like you could make your own tiles by using what do they call it? Sort of ink bubbles, and then you place the tile on and it gives like a marble effect. Or you could I don't know the term, but you could like engrave wood with sort of hot bits of metal, like a hot pen, and you sort of burn in your design. But almost all of these events, firstly, there wasn't a huge amount. I've just probably listed off the majority of them. And secondly, a lot of them were aimed at kids. And even the ones that were sort of for any age, they were mostly taken up by kids, which is fine. It was a Sunday, and I get that families, or if the parents wanted to go out there, they have to take the children along if they can't get care. So they kind of, it's a distraction for them. But for people like my girlfriend, who maybe it wasn't her cup of tea per se. She'd kind of gone along with the promise, I suppose, that there'd be things to do and things to make. And I think the biggest issue for me with it was there wasn't actually much metalwork or blacksmithing. There was one guy I saw who had a stall set up. I think he was called Firebeard. And I mean, it was fine. He had a little forge, he had a little anvil, and he demonstrated making a knife. And he was sort of selling his products, but that was it. But like I say, one thing they did do was they had a lot, and I mean a lot, of big name YouTubers. I mean, to reel off a few of them, there was a blacksmith like Sam Fowler, the person who used to work with Alec Steele, Evan and Caitlin, who I think is doing a collaboration with Alec Steele soon. People like the Blind Wood Turner. He was actually quite interesting to watch. I found it fascinating that this guy with no sight is just able to produce these beautiful products. Or another big name, James Bruton, who obviously does X-Robots, a lot of sort of collabs with Colin Furze, like the Iron Man suit they did recently. So there were some relatively big YouTube names there. Which brings me on to the title of this video. I got to meet Alec Steele. Alec Steele was without a doubt, the biggest influence on me getting started on metalwork. And I hold my hands up and say I am by no means any good. I'm very much rookie level, but it was watching his videos. I really enjoyed watching them. And I always had that thing in my head, which I'm sure a lot of people do, where you're like, I want to have a go at that. I think I could try that. And for a really long time, probably, I don't know, maybe a year or so, it was just a thought, I want to try that. And then, as you might have seen in some of my other videos, I just decided to make a forge. And then I decided to make buy an anvil, make an anvil. Might take a bit more metal than I've got. But you get the point. He was a big influence on me. And I was actually quite excited to meet him. I wanted to see what he was like in person. And the way I ran into him was quite interesting, because myself and my girlfriend had just arrived. We had had a fair drive to get to Birmingham. And so the first thing we needed to do was make a trip via the facilities. And on walking out, I see this guy in a blue t-shirt carrying around a big camera on a sort of tripod-y carry thing, I don't know what you call it again. And there he was, and I just wandered over and I said, "Hey dude, how's it going?" And he was a really nice guy. That sort of thing about, never meet your heroes. He's an exception to that rule. He was genuinely really polite. He came over, he shook my hand, he asked me my name, I introduced myself, I introduced Dash, we had a little chat for a few minutes, and he let me have a photograph with him. And I got my timing absolutely spot on, because he was obviously just arriving himself, I think, or he was doing a wander-around tour maybe of the Expo, and there was no one else around him. And as soon as I went over and started talking to him and I had the photo, suddenly everyone swamped him, because we were right next to the main stage. And within 10 minutes he was up on stage and he was doing his talk and his Q&A, and he was giving out free t-shirts, of which I was very lucky. I got given this for free, one of his designs. And I got to ask him a question. It may feature in one of his videos, I don't know. I just asked him whether he had any intention to teach again, which unfortunately he doesn't, because I would be on that bandwagon like a shot. But yeah, and I tell you what, right, because there's not many people, sort of celebrities I've met. I've run into very few. I'm not much of a sort of a brown noser. I don't have much interest, but I kind of felt an appreciation for him. Firstly, because of the quality of the product he makes. I think it's phenomenal. And then secondly, like I say, he inspired me. But one thing that really shone out to me about the guy was that he was amazing with his fans. Like, me and Dash, like I say, we were there for 4.5 hours, give or take. He was great during his speech. He was great, giving out the t-shirts. He was accepting questions. And then afterwards, he went over to a corner of this massive sort of, this big hall the expo was held in. Nothing there, just him. No seats, no table, and he stood up for the next 4.5 hours with a huge line of fans, and he shook everyone's hand, and he spoke to every single one of them. And he was really polite. He always smiled. He never refused a photo or a signature. And it was absolutely fascinating, because you'd wander off, you'd disappear around the expo, you'd be looking at something, and you'd look over your shoulder, and 2 hours later he's still there, and he's still on his feet, and he hasn't had a break. You carry on wandering, you look over your shoulder again, he's still there, and for 4.5 hours he was there. And I actually went up to him again, like when the queue had relatively died down, I think towards the end. I went over to him again, I waited in line. And when it was my turn, he said, "Hello mate, nice to see you again." And he shook my hand again, and I had a little chat with him. I asked him tips actually on how to hand forge Damascus, because if you've seen my video on that, it's a pretty pathetic attempt. But yeah, he gave me some genuinely good advice. He advised me I probably need a bigger forge, which yeah, I probably do. He recommended that I work with smaller billets rather than big large ones, because I don't have a power hammer. And it was just a really genuine conversation. You could tell as well, to give him, to really give him the credit. I know I'm kind of, probably getting a little bit sort of a bit cringy really by how much I seem to be worshipping this guy, but in all seriousness, you could tell he was tired. He was shifting his weight from foot to foot. He was knackered. He'd been stood up in the same spot for the best part of 5 hours. He had been, been taking photo after photo. He pretty much had that grin stuck on his face, which, that may be him, I don't know. But genuinely, he was a hard-working bugger, and I mean, I know you know this from his videos. You know, he works probably 120-hour weeks, but it was genuinely a bit of a feat of strength, really, just watching how patient he was with people. And genuinely, he would shake everyone's hand. He would always smile. He was always very polite. And I just thought, actually, there's not many people you can say that about. You know, someone who's actually got that amount of time for his fans. And interestingly, I actually ran into Sam Fowler, who I mentioned earlier. He used to sort of work in Alec's workshop as well, I believe. I'll be honest, I don't know a huge amount about Sam. He was always kind of in the background doing things. But yeah, Sam was there. He wasn't doing any talks or anything. He was just wandering around the expo as well with his family. And I had a little chat with him, and I sort of passed a little hilarious joke, as I do. But I said, you know, don't fancy going to rescue him then? And he just turned around and he says, do you know what? He loves it. He just absolutely loves it. He was there doing it all day yesterday. You know, he said he saw, you know, he probably did 2,000 photos and signatures and all the rest with people. He just said, yep, he loves it. Can't tear him away from it. And I thought, yeah, you know what? Fair play to him. Fair play, because I couldn't do it. It would drive me bonkers. But, yeah, good on him. Free t-shirt. Got to speak to the guy, got to meet the guy, shake his hand, have a chat. Genuine bloke. Yeah. So if you ever wonder when you watch those Alec Steele videos, you know, he's hyperactive, wacky hair, big glasses, big character. He's like it. He's a nice guy. I was genuinely quite impressed. And then for the rest of the day, we hopped in the car, drove down to Fenny Compton, wandered along the canal, found a nice pub, had a massive burger, spoke to a cool dog, and went home. So all in all, pretty epic day. Yeah. So if Alex sees this, I'm guessing he probably won't. You know, I've got 9 subscribers at the time of making this, but if on the off chance he does, fair play, mate. You're a better man than I am. Keep doing what you're doing, bro. Really cool. Anyway, that's all from me, so take it easy. All the best. Cheers, then.
Guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming out. This is very exciting. This is what it's all about. It is an honor to put faces to viewers, put people to comment. Thank you guys so much. And you guys are watching this video. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to migrate this way. Once I take my mic pack off, I'm going to get a drink of water, and we'll do some chatting over there. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that.